Hello, I am Peter Okwocha. Welcome to Focus on Africa. Our top stories. As the International Labour Organization warns that the livelihood of half of the world's workers is at risk, we report on a coronavirus cash flow crisis as figures for money transfers, home or remittances are expected to fall by 20%. $3.4 billion of emergency IMF funding approved for Nigeria, the biggest payment to any country hit by the coronavirus pandemic. With one of the highest death rates on the continent, the World Health Organization calls on Egypt to carry out more testing. Also on the program, live in lockdown.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good.
We meet the artists and celebrities who are entertaining their fans virtually and sometimes even giving them online lessons.
I wanted also to learn new skills. I decided to give them their free sessions. I come online and then I teach them whatever I think I know.
Thanks for joining us here on Focus on Africa from BBC World News. The International Labour Organization has warned that about half of all workers worldwide are in danger of having their livelihoods destroyed because of the coronavirus pandemic. That's about 1.5 billion people. The ILO says those with informal work arrangements are most in danger. This is likely to affect diaspora remittances to low and middle income countries, signifying a loss of a crucial lifeline for many vulnerable households. According to the World Bank, in 2019, just over $700 billion were paid in remittances across the globe. They expect remittance transfers to drop by about 20% this calendar year, a loss of about $255 billion. Across sub-Saharan Africa, the impact could be greater still, as a 23% drop in remittances is forecast, though the World Bank believes those figures will bounce back next year. BBC Africa business journalist Maya Hayakawa meets people across the continent who have already been impacted.
This is Dahabshil, a popular money transfer service provider in Somalia's capital, Mogadishu. Layla is waiting to receive a payment from her sisters living in the United States. She is currently unemployed and the remittance helps her cover her rent and buy food.
Coronavirus had a huge impact on us now that our relatives abroad are in quarantine. We are in the Menzo from Medan and we will have the Eid celebration soon. The money that we were getting has reduced and will further go down in case this does not end soon.
The Horn of Africa state is estimated to have between 1.5 and 2 million people living in the diaspora. The remittances they send back home account for 20% of the country's GDP. Further west in Senegal, Amadou, a taxi driver, worries that if the situation remains the same, he may be unable to send money back home to his family in Guinea.
Before the outbreak, I could make between 30,000 and 35,000 CFA. But since the disease, my income has really gone down from about 20,000 CFA and less. There is also a curfew. I used to start work at 6 a.m. and finish at about 10 p.m. Now I work from 7 a.m. to just 5 p.m. The clientele has really gone down.
Remittances are a safety net for millions of vulnerable households in Africa who depend on money sent home to afford basic necessities such as food, shelter, healthcare, and education. Bongani Chikanda, a migrant worker in South Africa, would normally send money to his aging parents in Malawi to cover their medical insurance. But now, with a partial lockdown in Malawi and a strict stay-at-home order in South Africa, Bongani is unable to use the traditional transfer services as they are temporarily closed for not being essential business. He has had to find other ways to send money to his parents.
I have got friends who have got businesses in Malawi. So it was about asking for a favor for them to send, to give my parents money for this month. But you can't go on continuously like that, right? Because they've also got their own cash flow issues.
The World Bank says that economic dips are temporary, already forecasting a slight recovery in remittance flows for 2021. But the road to recovery is an uncertain one as the world continues to fight the pandemic. Maya Hayakawa, BBC News, Nairobi.
Well, let's discuss this issue further. Now, joining me on the line is Stephen Karingi from Addis Ababa. He's the Director of the Regional Integration and Trade Division at the United Nations Commission for Africa. Stephen, thanks for talking to us. What kind of impact will this reduction in remittances have on the most vulnerable people on the continent?
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Peter. So, in fact, as your program has said so far, we are expecting a significant hit in terms of remittance flow globally, and this includes Africa. Now, as you know, remittances have actually two channels through which they impact on economies and on people. First of all, we have the macro impacts. Over the last 10 years or so, remittances have become a very important part of financing development in Africa. In fact, they have overtaken overseas development assistance and FDI in many countries. So they have actually become a stabilizing factor of African economies. For some economies, the remittances go into the reserves, making it possible for these countries to have a stable exchange rate. And as you know, a stable exchange rate is a good anchor for prices in the domestic economy. And for the poor people, and even for businesses, you need to have macro stability to be able to do business and also to keep workers moving. When it comes to the social side, as we have had, they have actually become the most important missing parts of social safety nets in the continent. And so you have a lot of households that use these remittances for consumption smoothing. And also, when it comes to social services, a lot of kids are able to go to school and also to get good health care through the remittances.
So, Stephen, I mean, if I can just come in here, I mean, what exactly then can be done? Because if people are not working, obviously they can't send any money home. So is there any short-term solution or immediate solution to this problem?
Yeah, first of all, we have to keep our kids in school. I wanted to make this point because what we have seen is that a 10% increase in remittances, you have at least 4.2% increase in enrollment in primary and secondary education. So a short-term solution has to be found because you cannot have a situation whereby kids are not able to go to school when the schools opened because they still have generational and intergenerational equity issues. So what governments need to do is basically to use the mechanisms that they are putting in place for social safety to reach to those families that are not able to access remittances today. And this needs to be made into structural issues that over a long time, instead of just relying on remittances for social safety net, governments need to put in place social safety measures so that these kinds of shocks are not experienced by households.
And what about globally? So these countries where these monies leave from for the poor, lower income countries, is there anything that the governments in those countries can be doing?
In fact, yes. So first of all, we know that stimulus packages have actually been given by this government, especially the G20 countries, to their businesses. It is important to realize what the ILO is saying, that some of the jobs are vulnerable. So even those people who are in those vulnerable jobs need to be given access to these stimulus packages so that they can also be able to help their families back home, because they do actually have contracts with their employers. Also, we need to think of how do you reduce the cost of remittances, including using the digital systems, because as the numbers show, out of every $100 that are sent back to families through remittances, at least seven of those dollars.
Yes, indeed. And Stephen, some of those rates to send those monies back can be quite high. That's Stephen Karingi from the United Nations Commission for Africa. Thank you very much for speaking to us here on Focus on Africa.
Thank you.
Well, Africa's major oil-producing nations are also bracing for a huge economic hit as global shutdowns caused by the coronavirus pandemic reduce prices and demand. With the global economy slowing, including in China, the world's largest oil importer, where the virus was first reported, and in many countries operating under lockdown, purchases of African oil have been slashed. The continent's largest oil producer, Nigeria, predicted to be one of those which will be worst hit, has just secured a $3.4 billion emergency loan from the International Monetary Fund. It's the largest payment to any country hit by the coronavirus pandemic.
This money from IMF, the approval is coming at a time the Nigerian Senate also approved for the President, Muhammadu Buhari, to borrow $2.3 billion domestically. So it appears that Nigeria is desperately looking for money at this period of great uncertainty. Nigeria's economy heavily relies on oil, but the pandemic has caused the oil price to crash to as low as $20 per barrel. So Nigeria is looking for money to plug the gap. According to the International Monetary Fund, IMF, the $3.4 billion emergency finance support to Nigeria is the largest such funding so far as the response to the COVID-19 is concerned. The organization has provided. It's not clear which areas specifically Nigeria will spend this money in, but the IMF is saying that the aim of this support is to help Nigeria deal with the effect of COVID-19 pandemic, and it says the money will help Nigeria free up some resources to support lives and livelihood in the country. It is not clear what terms and conditions the International Monetary Fund has set for Nigeria to guarantee this financial support.
Isaac Khalid there from Abuja, Nigeria. Let's take a quick look now at other stories making the headlines across Africa and the rest of the world. The Tanzanian Prime Minister Kassim Majaliwa says there have been 480 confirmed cases of coronavirus in the country. He made the announcement after widespread criticism of the government for failing to give daily updates on the virus. This led to speculation that the authorities were concealing the true number of cases. Around 1 million Malawians are set to receive $40 a month to help cushion them against the economic impact of the coronavirus. The payments are set to begin on Friday and are designed to match the minimum wage, but it's not clear how long this will last. The High Court in Kampala has ordered Ugandan MPs to hand back the cash they allocated to themselves to help fight against COVID-19. Each MP was given 20 million Ugandan shillings, which is slightly more than $5,000. Some had rejected the cash, including presidential hopeful Bobi Wine, who called the handout shameful. And a riot has broken out at a prison in the center of Sierra Leone's capital, Freetown. Prisoners turned violent following the confirmation of a coronavirus case in the jail broke out. Smoke was seen rising from the building, and a spokesman said there were casualties but gave no information on the numbers. The coronavirus crisis is getting worse in Egypt, where the number of daily recorded cases has doubled since last week. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi has led a video conference with quarantine hospitals in the country to discuss efforts to combat COVID-19, while the health ministry has said there have been more than 5,000 cases and over 350 deaths. Sally Nabil tells us more.
Infections and deaths in Egypt are rising steadily. A couple of weeks ago, we used to record less than 100 cases a day. Now we record at least 200 cases a day. The World Health Organization said that the death rate in Egypt is quite high. It's 7.6%. It also called on the government to do more scans and tests, as some people believe that the real numbers are much higher than those listed in official statements. A lot of doctors and nurses are complaining about the lack of personal protective equipment like masks and gloves and alcohol. Although we have a curfew, a night curfew from 9 p.m. till 6 a.m., restaurants shut down by 5 p.m., airports have been closed for weeks, but life in the morning is more or less business as usual. Streets in Cairo are busy, public transportation is packed with people. The government hopes life can go back to normal by the end of the holy month of Ramadan, so we're talking about late May. We do not know yet if this is quite a realistic vision given the current health condition. But the Egyptian economy has been hit quite hard, especially tourism and aviation, as a result of the coronavirus pandemic.
Salina Bill there. Now, this is Focus on Africa from BBC World News with me, Peter Okwacha. Still to come, as Ethiopia receives more protective equipment from Chinese billionaire Jack Ma, we talk to the country's health minister about that and why their airline is still flying. Welcome back to Focus on Africa. I'm Peter Okwache. Let's turn to Ethiopia now, where 130 cases of the novel coronavirus have been officially registered. The government has declared a 5-month-long state of emergency and postponed elections which were due in August. The country, which has the second largest population on the continent, is increasing the number of tests it is carrying out on its citizens. And earlier today, its health minister, Dr. Lai Tadesse, received the third batch of personal protective equipment donated to the continent by Chinese billionaire Jack Ma. On the line to the capital, Addis Ababa, I began by asking Dr. Leah about the importance of such donations for the continent.
The past 2 consignments, of course, have been distributed to all African countries with PPEs and kits. And so there are additional materials that were not in the initial consignment, but also similar materials like testing kits. All PPEs were there, but also BPAP machines for care and treatment are also added. It's really an enormous contribution, especially coming from an individual to a continent. And we are really grateful for this support.
Let's talk about your country, Ethiopia, now, and what you are doing as a government to stop this spread. In your case, you've gone more for all-out testing in the country. How have you been able to sustain this, and how much is this affecting other parts of the health sector?
We have been progressively increasing our testing, both the testing capacity as well as testing various parts of the population. So I'm talking about the lab testing now, but the surveillance you have mentioned is we're doing the community surveillance house-to-house visits in selected communities, especially in the areas where cases were detected. So Addis and other total of 5 regions where cases are detected so far. We've started this surveillance to check if there are those with symptoms in homes with travel history, and also at the same time we're trying to use this to create more awareness. So we're progressively expanding our testing now, but still planning to increase that capacity and test more.
Now, a lot of the cases that have been confirmed in Ethiopia are people who traveled in to the country from abroad. Does this mean then that you're not seeing local contact spreading on the continent? And if this is so, how have you been able to prevent this?
Most of the positive cases so far have been either imported or contacts of positive cases, but there were only very few cases that we have found with no obvious contact history, no travel history. So, and testing among those contacts was also very aggressive and trying to detect those. Still, there's a lot we don't know, but we have instituted an aggressive approach in terms of the border control, starting early on, where there was point of entry screening starting end of January. And also the mandatory quarantine has been instituted. So we believe some of the interventions that have been done so far have had an impact.
Given the fact that most of your positive cases have come from abroad, your government has been criticized for still allowing flights into the country from abroad, especially from China. Indeed, your state-owned airline still has flights to and from China.
When we decided the mandatory quarantine is when some of the flight restrictions have come. And at that time, really, when you see the key risk countries, at that time, the infection also in China has been controlled. And this is also about balancing the economic aspects of the countries need, because significant negative impact of the economy will also damage the health itself or on all other systems. But we believe that especially the strong approach of having the mandatory quarantine has significant impact in terms of containing it.
Well, while lockdowns and curfews persist, artists, musicians and other so-called creatives have taken to live streaming their talents to help keep their fans entertained and also help them acquire new skills. BBC Africa spoke to some of these performers.
I look the part, I feel that way, I live like that, take risks like that on.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good.
Art in general can do a lot of work to help other people understand what's going on.
I know my fans don't get to see me perform right now, so I just try to give the fans a little something to keep them entertained, you know, and remind them of the good times. And it's really boring right now, so any form of entertainment is good.
I thought it would be great to have some moments of joy and connection with fans, and I think that we're going to need moments of light. Music is one of the ways. I don't think it's the only one.
Came up with this idea of doing a show called No Filter with Naomi, where I have conversations with people that I know, some that I don't, just to give people content and insight into what other people are going through.
I decided to do Instagram live sessions because I know art is healing. Art is something that can make the person cope with any problem. People wanted also to learn new skills. I decided to give them their free sessions. I come online and then I teach them whatever I think I know about art.
I didn't know this was going to happen in this way. I kept it with me like a little emergency kit. And the day came where I felt like I needed to put it on to get back home to New York. And so that's what I did.
I be damned if I don't toast. I'll be honest, I've been modest, but I be damned.
They enjoy it. Because some of them weren't at the show, so they've never seen that. So for them, they're experiencing it for the first time. From an artist's perspective, it's a selfless thing. This really is 1,000 times better to be on stage.
I can see the reaction they are giving through comments. They're so impressed, so happy. I hope some people will get benefit of this.
The message I have for my fans is do not panic. Maintain the peace of your mind. I think now more than ever, you have to be very discerning about which WhatsApp groups you are in, what forwards you're reading.
Being alone for this long might drive you crazy. Being alone with your parents for this long might drive you crazy. So just hang in there, try and get creative, try and make the best of this time that you have right now.
The message that I will give to people online is to cope with staying home. It's better to obtain a new skill.
We are all one. And yes, we are privileged in many senses, but we have to use who we are to help the others.
Corona, are you there? Please go away.
It's just made me realize I'm not doing anything creative whatsoever during this lockdown. I've got to get started. Just before we go, the International Labour Organization has warned that about half of all workers worldwide are in danger of having their livelihoods destroyed because of the pandemic. That's about 1.5 billion people. The ILO says those with informal work arrangements are most in danger. That's it on Focus on Africa for today. I am Peter Okoche. Thanks for watching.